Hey everybody. So we are changing gears today. So we're still going to take the quiz today, but I wanted to go ahead and introduce you to business organizations. So today will be pretty short. We're just going to look at the beginning, the basics of it, and some of the more simple forms of a business organization. All right, so when we do this, we're going to use the term firm a lot in here. All right, but that's just synonymous with the term business, right? So if you look at a law firm, it's just a business related to the act of lawyering. And so the key thing to think about when you look at these firms is the bringing together of individuals, the division of labor. So if you look at a school as a good example, we divide up labor in a lot of different ways, right? All of them are necessary for the running of the school. So we've got, of course, the teachers, but we've also got the custodians, we've got the cafeteria workers, we've got the guidance counselors, the principals. All right, we've got a big variety of different types of jobs, all of which are necessary for the running of schools. All right, and so the key thing here is the specialization, right? You couldn't make me an admin, and chances are I wouldn't be very efficient at it. The same way that if you put one of the administrators in my classroom, chances are they wouldn't be as good of it, as I am, because I've got the practice at it lately. I've been doing this for a while. Same thing with the cafeteria workers or the custodians, right? We all specialize in our individual tasks, and by doing that, we're more productive overall. All right, and so we're going to address three main types of business organizations. All right, so if you are interested in one day owning or operating your own business, all right, this is a really good section for you. So we're going to look at how businesses are structured, all right, and how what might work well for one business might not necessarily work well for another. All right, and so today we're going to look mostly at this term sole proprietorship. The key word here being sole. So if you're thinking about like a video game, and if you're playing it solo, that means you're playing it by yourself, right? Proprietorship just means a business. All right, and so if any of you have ever had like a side hustle before, like mowing lawns or babysitting, all right, you had a sole proprietorship, right? So chances are you got to determine your own hours, how many yards you mowed, what days you babysat or didn't babysit. You probably got to keep all of the profits. But at the same time, you carry all the risk as well. If you're riding on that lawnmower or pushing the lawnmower and you hit a rock and it goes through someone's windshield, well, now you're liable or you're responsible for those damages. Partnerships are a little bit different. All right, so we'll look at my wife's law firm and how the different lawyers there have to make decisions together. All right, so they're called partners there. The lawyers that have a stake in the firm, that own the firm, are called partners, because they all own and operate the business together. Whenever they hire somebody or whenever they fire somebody, they've got to take it to a vote. They've got to make that decision as a group as opposed to just one person making decisions for the businesses. So we'll talk about the pros and cons of that as well. And we'll look at corporations, which are a lot different than the first two. Corporations, in the eyes of the law, are kind of seen as their own people. And so what I mean by that is, let's say that you were to go into McDonald's and an employee there accidentally dumped some water on the floor and never cleaned it up. You walk in, you slip, you fall, you hit your head, and you have to go to the hospital. Well, whenever you go to sue, you wouldn't sue the employee that made the mess. You wouldn't sue the manager either. You wouldn't even sue the owner of the McDonald's. You would sue McDonald's Corporation. The lawsuit would be Mr. Sicoli v. McDonald's Corporation. All right, because in the eyes of the law, it is seen as its own person. It's liable for itself. So I own stock of McDonald's, but I'm not in any way liable for it, right? I don't get to make the day-to-day decisions there. I don't have a risk. If you sue McDonald's, my life savings isn't at risk. All right, and so the ownership and the management of these two are separated. And so these will be the three business organizations we'll look at in the most detail. All right, today though, I just want to look at the sole proprietorship in particular. All right, so most businesses would be sole proprietorships. If you were to drive down Altama from Fletsy all the way down to, the downtown area, most of the businesses you'd pass along the way would be sole proprietorships. Whether it's the car dealership down there or the lawnmower repair service across the street from there, or Willie's Weenie Wagon, or the Chinese restaurant down the street, most of those are owned and operated by individuals or by families. All right, and so the key takeaway here is that you've got one person or one family that makes all the profits, but also takes on all of the debt. All right, so a good example of this, I actually have my own business. Actually, let's hold off on that for 1 second. When we're looking at the advantages here, sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. All right, so, and again, you can pause me at any time you need if I'm going too fast. But one of the big advantages here of these sole proprietorships is that they're really easy to start up. If you wanted to open up your own business today, you could. You could just go down to the courthouse and register it. It would cost you like $35. So my business is actually registered through Amazon. I sell Spanish moss online on Amazon. For those of you who don't know what Spanish moss is, it hangs from the big oak trees, and people buy it to hold moisture into their potted plants. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to sell, but people buy it for like $15 or $20 a pound. All right, and so getting this business license is really, really easy. Essentially what you're doing is you're tying your name to a business. All right, that way if something happens, you are liable or you are responsible for that business. All right, and so let's say that all right, let's hold off on that part for a second. All right, well, let's say that if you're looking at that Spanish moss, the only downside of it is that sometimes it can have red bugs or chiggers inside of it. So I've got to boil it, make sure that all of those bugs are killed before I dry it, package it, and ship it off. Now, if I mess up one day and I don't kill all of those bugs and they get into someone's house and get in their beds and their couches and stuff like that, well, if they have to pay to get it cleaned or pay to get the bugs exterminated, I could be liable for that. They could sue me specifically for it. So it wouldn't be the business, only the business that would get into trouble. It would be me as well. They could go after my savings or my house or my car if I were to get someone hurt or sick. Now, I think the risk is pretty low, and so I'm not super concerned about it. And I've also got insurance in case something goes wrong. All right, so some of the other benefits, all right, there's not a whole lot of regulations. I've never had anybody from the government come in and tell me how to run the business, and so, it's pretty laid back. I get to keep all the profits, and I have full control over it. So whenever it gets to like certain parts of the year, like, the first month of school especially, I close down the account for like a month. All right, that way people couldn't send in any orders or anything like that. I needed some time off to make sure that other parts of my life were okay. All right, and so a good thing about the sole proprietorship is that I can start and stop it whenever I want. I've got full control over it. All right, but there are some downsides as well. All right, the biggest downside is this unlimited liability. All right, so again, that's you mowing the lawn, hitting a rock, and let's say it hits a person instead, and it sends them to the hospital. Well, you are 100% fully liable for that action, right? They can sue your business and they can sue you for that. And so if your business doesn't have enough money to cover those expenses, then that's your savings that are on the line then, or your house or your car or anything of value. All right, so that's the downside of these sole proprietorships, is that they carry a lot of responsibility. Yes, you get to keep all of the profits, but you also get to keep all of the risk as well, which isn't that great. All right, secondly, you've got this limited access to resources. All right, and so because of that, these businesses have a limited life. They close down really easy. And an easy way to look at this is to look at Tio Taco down the street. In the past 10 years, I feel like that's been 6 or 7 different restaurants. All right, and so the reason for that is because they're all individually owned, or they're owned by small families. All right, and so they don't have the resources that Walmart or McDonald's does. All right, and so as often as those restaurants in that location have closed down, whether it's been Bite My Burger, Tio Taco, the Dog House, those have all closed down. I don't think I've ever seen a McDonald's close down before. I've never seen a McDonald's go out of business. That's because there's a corporation behind them to give them capital, to give them advertising, to give them brand recognition. But smaller businesses don't really have that. And so because of that, very often they go out of business a lot easier than bigger corporations do. All right, and so the last thing I want you to do today is I want you to watch this short video on pedicabs. It's looking at small business owners in New York City, and then you'll be done for the day after watching this.